US President Joe Biden has agreed to attend a summit with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, to discuss the crisis in Ukraine. The talks were proposed by France, but will only take place if Russia does not invade its neighbour. It's hoped the meeting will find a diplomatic solution to one of the worst security crises in Europe in decades.
With the one condition that Russian forces did not invade. But for now, the foreign ministers will continue talks to lay the groundwork for a presidential meeting. Ukraine and Russian-backed rebels have both accused the other for serious ceasefire violations, with hundreds of explosions recorded over the last few days. Speaking alongside EU foreign ministers at a meeting in Brussels, Ukraine's foreign minister welcomed the prospect of a summit.
And we will closely coordinate with him on the eve of, as they will be preparing this summit, to synchronize our positions and to make sure that our interests will be taken into account. We hope, of course, as human beings, as someone who desperately wants to avoid the war, we hope that two presidents will walk out from the room with an agreement about Russia withdrawing its forces from Ukraine. This will be the clear indicator that Russia is ready to escalate. If this doesn't happen, it means that we remain in the same escalating logic by Russia.
Meanwhile, Russia is extending its military drills in Belarus, and satellite images show Russian forces advancing closer to Ukraine's border. US leaders remain concerned frontline commanders are making final preparations ahead of an attack. From Europe correspondent Nick Dole.
Here in Ukraine's east, a war's been waged for 8 years.
Stop the war. Tell Zelensky. Tell Putin to stop all of this.
Violence is rising in the breakaway Donbas region.
It's worse than 2014. They were fighting less, and now they hit us every day.
Moscow says Ukraine is the aggressor, but these soldiers accuse pro-Russian separatists of trying to draw them into conflict.
Large calibre artillery is being employed, most likely to provoke us to respond and fire on their territory.
The United States says it's all part of Moscow's plan.
It certainly looks like everything we said was likely to occur in the lead up to the actual invasion is happening. We're seeing false flag operations taking place in eastern Ukraine, the manufacturing of provocations and justifications for Russia to go in.
Russia has announced it's extending its military exercises in Belarus, leaving an estimated 30,000 troops on Ukraine's northern border. Moscow says the US is deliberately spreading fear about the drills, but Washington says their extension is another sign the Russian president has decided to invade Ukraine.
You could see a significant amount of combat power move very quickly down to take Kyiv.
And the combat power appears to be growing. These satellite images show Russian troops on Ukraine's eastern border a week ago and then again today. The 8th anniversary of the bloody protests in Ukraine against the country's pro-Russia president serves as a stark reminder of what's at stake. Maidan Square became a virtual war zone as demonstrators demanding closer links with Europe clashed with government forces. A lot's changed since then, but the tensions with Moscow remain.
The protesters who lost their lives are known by many Ukrainians as the Heavenly 100. Dozens of them were killed by snipers right here on the streets of Kyiv, and they're honoured around this time every year.
Zhana Ozina was protesting here in 2014 when things turned violent.
The soldiers, just the amount of them are just bigger and bigger every day. And this is totally opposite that Putin says.
It could come at a terrible cost, but people here say their country's freedom is worth fighting for. Nick Dole, ABC News, Kyiv.
At the moment, she joined with other countries in condemning Russian cyber attacks against key infrastructure such as banks. According to Ukraine's foreign minister, the two discussed ways for Australia to increase our involvement by providing Ukraine military technical support, not tanks and guns, but know-how predominantly. The Prime Minister Scott Morrison has left the option of extending economic sanctions on the table. That's if Russia were to launch a full-scale invasion. For more on this, I'm joined by Ukraine's head of mission in Australia, Volodymyr Shalkivsky. Thanks very much for your time. We spoke 2 weeks ago and you said in Ukraine things were still relatively calm, not inevitable is how you saw invasion. Has the mood changed at all?
Good morning. Situation becoming more tense for sure, yes, because the military build-up continues along the borders, and we have to government takes it very seriously, and regular citizens, ordinary citizens, of course, have to pay attention to the news coverage that they receive from all sources, and that's still topic number one. So I can say for sure that situation is it is not de-escalation at all, and being in this kind of stance for already second month, it's of course does not influence positively on the general mood.
We've had reports that the French are talking about they might have some sort of progress, that there's talk of ceasefire in Donbass region as part of de-escalation. The problem is we've sort of had this hope before and it's been dashed. What's your information on that potential breakthrough?
Yes, there is still room for diplomacy. As military build-up continues along our borders, we have increase in our international support and assistance from many countries, including Australia. Just recently, there was an announcement about expansion of cybersecurity assistance. The initiative of the French president is one of the options. Ukrainian government is planning to call for the Security Council meeting within the UN, plus Security Council 5 members, plus Ukraine, Germany, and Turkey, to evaluate and discuss current security situation along our borders. We also call to all members of the Budapest Memorandum. It's 1994 memorandum between Ukraine, Russia, the US, and Great Britain, when we actually agreed to give up our nuclear weapons in exchange of the security guarantees.
And yeah, that was the weapons you held as a result of being part of the USSR.
Exactly.
So it's I know it's a long history and it goes back further than that. So what about, you mentioned diplomacy. I mean, that usually involves an element of quid pro quo. You want this, we want this. How do we meet in the middle? What can you offer Russia? Can you offer perhaps part of the Donbass region where you've got Russian separatist control anyway, and then you can say, look, we've genuinely put on this on the table. They should be taking that?
It's not possible because Donbass is the territory of Ukraine and Crimea is the territory of Ukraine. And with regard to Crimea, Russia simply refuses even to talk, to consider it, any discussions about its status. Regarding Donbass area, situation is getting worse because, first of all, Russian authorities distribute in huge numbers Russian passports among local Ukrainian citizens. It's already more than, according to some estimates, it's more than 600,000 people of Ukrainian.
Just issue a passport, here you go, here's a Russian passport.
Yes.
And then it looks as though the region's more Russian than it is, essentially.
Yes, and it's again about pretext, justification that Russia has to protect Russian citizens, even if they reside in other country.
And for people saying, well, you know, if you carve this region off, you might get peace, is it worth it? The thought being that Russia would never stop at that. they wouldn't consider that acceptable. They just then say, well, we've got this gain, that's great, let's keep pushing until we get to Kyiv.
I must admit that with Russia, they will push, they will go as far as you allow. So that is why, in order for us to be persuasive with Russia, we need to be strong. And our strength is actually growing due to the international support. So it's not about trading that we give something in exchange of something. It's about talking to them on equal terms.
Okay.
Because they perceive weakness as an invitation for the aggression.
On how you'd like Australia to help, so economic sanctions are spoken about a lot. Do you think they should just be brought forward, enact them now, show Russia part of the pain and the extent of it before the invasion?
Yes, it's one of the issues of our discussion with our international partners, because we believe that sanctions have to be applied before the attack, not after.
And then you also get the local Russian populace perhaps economically suffering, and then support falls away for the action. Is that part of the hope?
It's a message to the Russian government, and nobody made any kind of polls inside Russia whether ordinary Russians support military aggressions or against Ukraine. So it's questionable whether how ordinary Russians will perceive it.
So just briefly on this, so it would be good if Australia were part of bringing forward economic sanctions, doing them as soon as possible?
Yes, we would for sure much appreciate possibility of having those sanctions apply as soon as possible. But with sanctions, it's something that needs to be applied simultaneously by our country, by our partners, because it doesn't make sense for one country to intervene.
And military hardware, what does Ukraine need that Australia could supply?
We appreciate any kind of assistance that can boost our defense capabilities, that can help our military. But we are aware of the position of Australian government that military assistance is not on the table, that Australian troops will not be sent to Ukraine, and we, of course, didn't ask about it.
Okay.
But we will appreciate any kind of non-military assistance.
Volodymyr Shelkivsky, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.